Man, it has been such a long time. Great to see everybody out there at the Voice of College Football. Welcome in. We're going to talk up the game we all love here for the next couple hours here at the Voice of College Football. But man, it has been a long time. So I've been out of town and away and enjoying myself for the last several days since Thursday night. So it's been for the most part, restful weekend and enjoying weekend. With friends and family. So that has been quite nice. And I've been away from all of this since basically Thursday night. So great to be back. Great to be in front of all of you. And we've got the phone lines open at 860-499-3332. Couple things before we get cranked up. So I saw one thing while I was gone is that the College football playoff will not be expanding until at least 2026. That's all I saw. I was off. I was disconnected. I didn't read anything related to college football, did not look at anything. That's all I saw is that the college football playoff will not be expanding until at least 2026. So I knew, okay, as soon as I get back, I'm going to look into this. So we will look into that information and see what's transpired. And obviously nothing has transpired. There has been no type of agreement, settlement, collaboration on this whatsoever. Also, we had some helmets delivered right before I left on Thursday. So that was nice to see. I went up and picked up a shipment of helmets that came in. And I know I don't want to misrepresent anyone. I don't want to. I don't have the emails in front of me that verified where these came from. But I know that Texas A&M, new edition there, Texas A&M. Thank you so much for that. And again, since I don't have the emails in front of me, I don't know who to credit for these. But Texas A&M, Oregon, of course, from Eric. Eric, thank you so much for Oregon. Eric asked me to go live the other night. It was over the weekend. I checked a few comments and saw that Eric was like, let's go live. Let's go live. I was like, I'm away and taking some time off. So we will go live soon. But it seems like it's been forever since I've been live taking calls. It's been since last Wednesday. So it's been 5 days since I've been live. It's been a lot longer than that, probably a week and a couple days, maybe after the Super Bowl, probably. Super Bowl post game since we've talked college football with you and gone live. Then quite the batch of Pac-12 helmets. I love this. I love it. I love the Pac-12 support. I love the fervency. I love the passion. I love the support shown and the attention given to the Pac-12 by someone out there. And again, I apologize. I hope that somebody will let me know who sent these to me because I was not expecting these. Stanford. UCLA. We got the UCLA helmet in from someone. And again, these came as a trio. So they came from a Pac-12 supporter here and Washington State. So Washington State, UCLA, Stanford are in the fold, as well as Texas A&M and Oregon. And again, Eric, thank you so much for that. And I've got an email that indicates who sent me the Texas A&M helmet, but I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't have that in front of me. And then the Pac-12 gift, I don't know who to credit for that, but 3-1. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. A lot of interesting comments came in over the weekend as well. I glanced at a few. I had released an SEC schedule fix and a Big Ten schedule fix. And no, did I purport in any way to have completely fixed the SEC or the Big Ten schedule, because I was working within the framework of the format of the divisions and the setup that they currently use. So I can't completely fix the scheduling if I stay within the format. Now, if I'm going to tear the whole thing up, I will do that. I will do that. So for some people that criticized my scheduling fix, it just created a much more equitable, much fairer schedule, both in the SEC and the Big Ten. And somebody had commented, I should probably go to the actual comments here. But somebody commented that I'm always picking on SEC scheduling. Yeah, for good reason. I do pick on SEC scheduling. They do it the worst. The SEC and the ACC have the worst in-conference scheduling. So I pick on the ACC and the SEC. I probably pick on the SEC a little bit more because it's a bigger, better conference with more attention. But everything I have targeted toward the SEC in building a horrendous schedule, in-conference schedule. I have laid down the same criticisms of the ACC. Why do Virginia Tech and Boston College have to play every year? What is the connection between Virginia Tech and Boston College? There is none. So I've run down the same thing. So again, we released an SEC schedule fix, a Big Ten schedule fix. We appreciate much of the support and the kind comments there. I did in no way, in staying with the current format, did I say that I was going to be able to fix them completely, because the format sucks. The division situation, first and foremost, the rivalries that exist. We want to protect most of those, the legitimate rivalries. We're going to protect those. And then playing only 8 games in conference in a 14-team conference is not efficient. It's not. It makes the championship less and less credible. So we'll get to SEC and Big Ten scheduling, and also the ACC. I have the same criticisms for the ACC that I do with the SEC. What the Big Ten does better is, number one, they've got 9 conference games. So the scheduling can be much more flexible. They're not tied down to these ridiculous, quote unquote, fake rivalries. Quote unquote rivalries or fake rivalries. Go either route on that one. So the Big Ten does not clamp itself down to these fake rivalries. They only protect one out of division rivalry, while the ACC and the SEC protect 7, and there's only 2 or 3 in each conference that makes sense. And then also with the 8-game schedule, you can only schedule 1 out of division game, and where you've got any kind of flexibility. So the SEC and the ACC scheduling sucks. The Big Ten is a little bit better. The Pac-12 is better than that because they only have 12 teams and they play 9 conference games. And then, of course, the Big 12 has a perfect setup, not because of their own genius, but because the conference sized down and they were left with 10 teams and 9 games. So they have the most legitimate championship. But I do want to dive into the playoff situation, or the non-playoff situation that was the big news over the weekend. Let's take this call, and then we will get into that right here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. It's
MSU number 1 fan. How you doing?
doing pretty good.
What's going on tonight?
Not much. Michigan State in the running for one of the top quarterbacks in the 2023 class, and Dante Moore.
All right. You've got to be excited about that. I'm not aware of Dante Moore. Where is he from?
He's a 5-star from He's from Martin Luther King in Detroit, Michigan.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on Mel Tucker and his recruiting?
My thoughts on Mel Tucker is that he is a guy who is extremely determined. He knows who he is. He knows what he wants his program to look like, what he wants it to sound like, what he wants it to be. So he's very focused. He's very determined, and he also is very understanding of himself, what the challenges are, what he wants his program to look like. So he's very decisive. So I like that. I like that he's decisive, and he has already built an identity in just 2 seasons, built an identity at Michigan State. He also is not resigned to the fact that Michigan State's supposed to be some middle tier recruiting program. He says, no, we're a national championship contender. That's how we're going to build our program. And so no recruit is off the board. We have just as good of facilities and tradition and all these things that he wants to make the program. And so he's not backing away from any type of recruiting situations. So I like that.
I did too. What were the two biggest games last year that jumped out to you that said Michigan State for real?
The two that jumped out at me. Well, of course, the Michigan game. Down by 16 points, completing all those fourth down conversions, fixing the defense mid to late third quarter to start to get some stops. The tremendous play by the cornerback. Can't think of his name off the top of my head, but that closed out the game with the interception. Who was that?
Chuck Brantley.
Yes. Baited, did a tremendous job of baiting Cade McNamara, picking off the last pass. So the comeback against Michigan was pretty remarkable. So that was game number one. There's no question that was the game of the year for Michigan State. Lost to Ohio State and Purdue. My other game would be Miami to go down. I think that's the game that really propelled the season. They went down there. It was a close game until the fourth quarter. And they're a team from up north that is not supposed to be able to stand up to the heat and the humidity and to be able to be tougher under those weather conditions. That was a tremendous effort. Those two games, those would be my two games.
Yeah. I also had Northwestern on there too.
Okay.
Northwestern, they were awful. I mean,
yes.
They were okay, but they were not your Northwestern that you're used to seeing. Thanks for taking my call, Mark.
Thank you, MSU #1 fan. Good to hear from you. Have a good night.
Yep, you too.
Before we take our next call, let me get the number up here, 860-499-3332. There we go. 860-499-3332. Let's get to our next call here at the Voice of College Football. Welcome in. Who's up?
Hey, Mark, it's the real MVP. How you doing?
The real MVP's here. I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I can't believe I wasn't first. I guess it's because more people are hitting that like and subscribe button along with the notification bell.
I suppose so. That was MSU #1 fan.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, this news from the playoff committee or non-news shouldn't be surprising. I mean, anybody that's worked with more than 5 people in a room should know it takes years upon years upon years for any substantial decision to be made. So.
Yes. Why? I don't know. But yes, that is what we are stuck with.
Do you think in 2026 it will change for sure? Or do you think it's just going to still be 4 teams because we got to protect the Rose Bowl? The Big Ten, for some reason, is worried about becoming the 7th best conference, revenue shares and all this stuff.
I think that if what has plagued college football over the past 7 or 8 years continues to plague college football, meaning the same teams are in the playoff and the same teams are winning playoff games, and that certain portions of the country are being turned off to college football, that those are going to be the type of motivators, and the ratings for the college football playoff games go down and continue to lag as opposed to what they were the first couple seasons, that those are going to be motivators for people to do something.
Do you think I heard that the P5 was worried about eventually not being allowed to get a seat at the table. Do you think that's a valid concern? I mean, the G5, not P5. Do you think that's a valid concern for the G5? about these decisions?
Well, I don't know if it's a valid concern because I don't know what the conversations are internally. They just had a team selected after having two teams that you could argue should have been selected in UCF in 2017 and 18. So they did prove that there's a path, that there's a way, that there are circumstances that could be presented in which they would be selected. Now, yeah, I don't know what the conversations are concerning the G5 and the automatic selection of a G5. That's what they need. They need, if there's going to be a 12-team playoff and it's going to be open to the group of 5, then they need to have a automatic bid, one bid. I don't know anyone that would really argue that. If you're not going to give the group of 5, and I'm not saying that they always have one of the 12 best teams in the country, but if you're not going to give one bid to the best group of 5, when you're talking about 130 teams, and it's almost split down the middle, 65 Power 5, 65 group of 5. It's almost an exact split. If you're not going to give 1 out of 12 to the group of 5, when there are 12 spots, then at that point, you might as well say, go play your own playoff. That makes no sense to me, to not give them an automatic spot.
I would agree. If there's 12, I think, and we're doing guaranteed playoff spots, then I think they should at least get one spot. So I would agree with that. I think for most or more years than not, I think there's been at least one group of 5 teams who's been in the top 12 in terms of rankings. Now, they might not have been one of the 12 best teams, but I think their rankings were one of the top 12. So, Mark, let me ask you about some other news that happened while you were gone, and with the Jim Harbaugh saga officially coming to a close. Were you surprised he got a 1-year extension after all the drama?
I'm not surprised, but this 1-year extension doesn't mean anything. So this is the way I interpret this 1-year extension. Jim Harbaugh flirted with the NFL. You could even say that by most indications, he wanted to go to the NFL. No NFL team would take him. So he runs back to Michigan with his, tail between his legs. And Michigan, because of who he is, Jim Harbaugh, and because he had his most successful season in 7 years, was happy to take him back. And because it's pretty late in the game to try to go find a new coach, it would have been interesting had Jim Harbaugh been coming back from a more mediocre season, an 8-4 type season, and it would have been earlier in the process with more candidates available, whether Michigan would have been so welcoming. But because of the way the circumstances played out, you've got two entities, in my opinion, who have egg on their face. You've got Jim Harbaugh, because he can say whatever he wants, but he clearly wanted to get an NFL job. Then you've got Michigan, who looks like they are begging and pleading and opening up their arms to Jim Harbaugh in any way that they can get him. So that they have been slighted by their head coach, but they will still take him back. So neither one looks good. So by extending the contract, if anybody's going to believe in this, if anyone's going to buy the charade, it's that Jim Harbaugh's showing that, I am committed. I am committed to Michigan. You're not going to see this happen again, so I'm going to sign this extension. So there's a show of commitment. And then on the side of Michigan, they're showing job well done, beat Ohio State, Big Ten championship playoff, that deserves an extension. Here's your extension. But when it's not even the 2022 season and you're handing out extensions for 2026, 1 year, it's not like they extended him to a 12-year contract. They extended 1 year. I just think it's a big show. I don't think it means anything.
So let me ask you it this way. You talked about Jim Harbaugh having a good season this year. You talked about Jim Harbaugh having a good season this year. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Mark, and I know that's your favorite place to be.
You know it.
Michigan will be at Ohio State next in the year blank. What is that year?
So we know what the teams will generally look like this season, and then past that, it's more of a estimation of where these programs are headed. So it becomes a guessing game. You're not knowing, you don't have knowledge of what the teams are going to look like on the field. But I'm going to project based on how good I think Ohio State's going to be and how good I believe Michigan is going to be. I am going to piss off some Michigan fans by saying this. I believe that 2020, now that I've let it all settle in and I've seen the aftermath of the Ohio State-Michigan game and what's happened to the two programs and who they are and what they are, I believe that game was an aberration. That doesn't mean I just think Ohio State's going to win every year, but I think Ohio State's going to continue to dominate the Big Ten for the most part, and Michigan's going to be a really good program that's going to be in the top 15 in the country. So let's say Michigan wins next in 20. Let's see. They go back home in 23 at 25. Ohio State wins another three straight, and then Michigan wins. You know, obviously, I don't know what the teams are going to look like in 2025, but just an estimation, Michigan's going to be winning this game once out of every 4 or 5 years.
Okay, I'm going to project a little further out before I go to my next point. Do you think Ohio State will lead the all-time series against Michigan within the next 15 to 20 years?
I used to be really good at knowing what the all-time series.
59 and 52.
I was just going to say, I was going to guess 9 games. It's only 7, 59, 52. And again, for anyone that's going to, of course, everything I say is on the record. It's right there. For any Michigan fans or anyone else who wants to hold me to this, that's fine, of course. But I reserve the option of revising my projection when things change. You know, if Jim Harbaugh leaves next season, then we've got a different coach, we've got a different situation, or whatever. I'm going to say, well, based on my estimation, if Ohio State's going to win 75% of these games, then if they go 15-5 in the next 20 years, that's going to get it done. So it's going to get it done a little bit before that. So in the 16 or 17-year range.
Okay. Yeah, I like this. This is why the offseason is fun. You can ask about the long-term questions. And you can get some.
We may even do some all-time program rankings if I ever get my butt in gear and figure out some kind of system.
Well, the final thing I would like to ask you is news that actually happened today involving my cat. We lost our offensive coordinator today, Liam Cohen. He decided to take the Rams job, Super Bowl defending champions. I don't blame him for leaving to go to the Rams. It's massive upgrade.
Got him from the Rams.
Yep. He's going back.
My Kentucky guy told me that last week, by the way. He said, don't be surprised if Liam Cohen heads back to the Rams. He told me that like 10 days ago.
Yeah. So I said he did turn down the same job from what the reporting is, and I think the Rams job was probably going to be the only one he was going to take. First, Mark, what's your reaction to the news? And second, how will this affect Kentucky?
Well, he's obviously, if he's taking over the offense for the best team in the NFL, the Super Bowl champion, he's well regarded. And I know that Kentucky's offense this past season, despite Will Levis's, I thought Will Levis had a good season, but he was inconsistent. That the Kentucky offense, of course, was better than it's been in quite some time. So I think it was pretty evident his impact even from that position. So I think it's an impactful loss. If a guy's that highly regarded to be taken as an offensive coordinator, by the Super Bowl champions, then he's obviously valuable.
Okay. And what do you think about potentially how this would impact Kentucky in the future? Because our offenses have looked suspect at best with times that we haven't had Wayne Combs with Mark Stoops as the head coach.
Well, hopefully, anytime a college football team has that type of a hire, a splash hire, and they're able to, even if it's for only one season, have somebody like that on staff, that they're able to harness some of that takeaway, learn from that, steal it. That's how you want to frame it. And I would think that they have enough intel in the building between Stoops and his other offensive guys to say, hey, we can watch film. We can copy everything that was presented to us this year.
Well, I hope so, because this is a big loss for us. Make sure to like and subscribe to this video, and make sure to like and subscribe to Mark's Notre Dame channel. Less than 50 subs to 1K, Mark.
Oh, that would be beautiful. Let's get Notre Dame up there to 1,000.
See you next week.
Thanks, man. Appreciate the call. All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. At some point, I will address this college football playoff situation, but I want to get to your calls. So let's get it right here. Thank you for calling. Who's on the line?
Hunter from Alabama.
Hey, Hunter. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. What's going on tonight?
I got two things for you. First one, what do you project Alabama to be next season with the additions of Gibbs and Eli Ricks and some of the other transfers that Alabama's got in, along with the recruiting class? I think our roster just got significantly upgraded with those transfers and with that recruiting class. I think we have a lot better chance of being a lot more consistent on defense, and you already know what we bring back on offense.
Yeah, so we did some position previews for the spring last week for Alabama. We're going to touch on the defense this week. All right. So these additions are tremendous, talking about Ricks and Gibbs. I'm a big believer in both of those guys. I think they're tremendous talents and will be a great addition. For the first time since, you could probably fill in the blank better than me, last season it was all on Brian Robinson to produce. There's usually that 1-2 punch. There's Stacy and Yeldon. There's you could go through the years. Obviously, ever since 2008, there's been a 1-2 punch, and there really wasn't last year. So it appears as though that they will have that type of setup this year. My main concerns with this team, and when I say that they're concerns, they're really not concerns, because I know how well stacked they are at these positions and how good the coaching is. But there's a lot coming back and a lot of experience along the offensive line, but they didn't play well. Would you agree, the worst offensive line performance for an entire season that Alabama has shown under Nick Saban? I do.
Yeah, I think so. But there was enough there to give me hope for next year. Like, they showed enough at times to where I went, okay, next season I can see them being drastically improved. Because we did see them improve, especially at the tail end of the season. From week to week, they really did. And so I think Tyler Booker is a guy that's coming in as an offensive lineman. And I think he has a really good chance to be, if not a starter, to be right in the mix with those guys. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, so Evan Neal's gone. Emil Ekior decided to come back. So they have a ton of experience coming back, and of course, there's never concern about the talent. So that's my one thought, is that the offensive line had its worst year under Saban, and we'll see if they can rebound. Number two would be the receiver core, and again, I'm not that concerned because there's just too many 4- and 5-star guys for them not to find 3 to 4 that can consistently make plays. But they really let down that team in the national championship game. Now they're going to have another season, another off season under their belts when they get put into that position again. But between Hall and Brooks, there were some huge drops, and just not there was a noticeable difference. Obviously, I don't want to take away from Georgia's national championship, but if Mechie and Williams play, I'm not going to say that Alabama would have won for sure, but I'm just saying the drop off was stark, noticeable, decided, substantial when those guys were not on the field.
Yeah, and the guy you got to watch out for too coming in this season, I think, on the offensive side of the ball, who I think is going to probably will start as a freshman, and that's Shaz Preston. I looked at this guy's film, and I know some people that are very well connected up there, and the Bama staff really, really likes him. Some of the coaching staff has compared him to Julio when he was a freshman. And so that's how much they like this guy.
Nice. Anything else, Hunter?
I'm sorry, you break. Yeah, one more thing. As far as I think you and Joel Klatt have persuaded me on this. And that's the playoff expansion. My concern is this. My concern is, one, I don't want to diminish. I think we've already done that to an extent, but I don't want us to diminish the bowl games. And I just don't. I think that 16 teams is too many, and I think I'm more comfortable with 12 teams. And I think 18 is not enough. But I do think there needs to be an expansion. I just don't know. I don't think there's any perfect scenario in which this can play out to where it's going to be perfect. I don't think any system like that is going to be perfect. But I do think there's time for expansion now. I just don't know what the formula is.
So, number one, you're right, Hunter. There is no perfect system, not even mine. So I've never promoted mine to be perfect. The thing is when the committee announced and made public its proposal last summer, if there would have been a way to, and mathematically it's impossible, but to have a 12-team playoff without any buys, I would have been completely in love with their proposal. I liked everything else. I liked awarding conference champions the first 4 spots, because then you reward the conference championship games. So you wouldn't have a situation in which Georgia shows up as number 1, undefeated, consensus number 1. They lose an SEC championship game and they're like, oh, well, no big deal. We're going to be number 2 or number 3. Nope. You go to the back of the line. You got to win your conference to be a top seed. I do also think that 12-team playoff proposal would work with home games in the first round, because, again, you would give more weight to the regular season conclusion and the conference championship games, because you would not have teams that would be so dominant that they could blow a game, not intentionally, but not focus on a game, or do what happens in the NFL where teams throw games away late in the season because they're their playoff position secure and they really can't do anything. So there's no reason to play their starters. We want to take away that possibility. And I think he would do that with first round playoff games at home. And also then again, the conference championship games, I think were highlighted by this proposal. And then also forcing Notre Dame to either join a conference or be relegated to always having to play a first round game. I liked everything with it, except for because of the math, 12 teams forces you into bye games, bye weeks for particular teams. And I don't agree with that. And I think I've gone on record here a number of ways of explaining why the byes, in my opinion, don't work in college football. And I will explain that to a new batch of people at some point. But I know that you've heard my rant on that.
Yes, and one more quick thing I want to ask you about. Alabama and Texas home series coming up the next 2 years.
Yeah.
With Texas having Sark there now, and recruiting at the level that he is, even in his first year, I'm pretty excited about this. So
you should be excited.
In your opinion, is that? Do you think that that's the direction that Alabama should go? I agree with you. I listened to some of your stuff on the scheduling. I don't think we should be playing 2 cupcakes again. I really don't. I think we should be playing teams, more ACC teams, or a big or team like Michigan for a regular season game or something like that. I don't think that we should be doing that. But this is the direction that I would like to see the scheduling go. Is to play a good team from a different conference every year. The feeling that I'm okay with 1 cupcake game, but you can't have 2 every year. So I think this home series is going to be good. And I'm excited. We play at Texas this year, don't we? Yeah.
Yes.
We play at Texas this year, and the next year it's going to be September the 10th. So I'm excited. Like, we got the week before that, we got Utah State. Why in the world are we playing Utah State? Like, really? I mean, that just doesn't. And then later on in the year, we play Austin Peay. I mean, couldn't we take that Austin Peay game and fill it in with like a Notre Dame or a Florida State or even a Boston College, something that's more competition than a team like that. So I agree with people that have that grievance with the way that the SEC schedules their games.
So here's my deal on the schedule is that if there's going to be 4 non-conference games, I would like there to be the one cupcake game is fine. These guys shouldn't have to play, Georgia or Texas A&M every week. So the one cupcake's fine. And then the other 3 games, I believe, should be non-conference games, and they don't have to be killers. So if you're Alabama, I don't think that they necessarily need to be playing Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Clemson. I don't believe in a killer schedule, but I believe in a balanced schedule, and I've laid this out, that is a composite 500 schedule from the previous season. So Alabama would be playing 3 Power 5 teams, but they would be of all shapes and sizes. I think we get caught up in wanting to see all the powerhouses play, and of course we do. But there's no reason to beat up Alabama and Ohio State because they are who they are. They should play tough teams out of conference, but within reason. My schedule would look for Alabama would look something like the Tennessee-Chattanooga game at some point, and then the other 3 games would look something like Oklahoma, Purdue, and Tulsa, or something like that. I don't know. That might be a bad example, but I've laid it all out that I just think that these schedules should be equitable.
Well, what they need to do, Mark, is they need to to hire you for the NCAA to come and do the scheduling for all the teams. I think what you just laid out is perfect.
Well, that would be nice. I would be all for it because I've laid this out years and years ago that I don't believe in hammering Alabama because they're Alabama and having them have to play all these ridiculous games
No.
or taking it easy on
either.
Vandy because they're Vandy and saying, oh, we don't care. Vandy can play Middle Tennessee and Connecticut and whomever. I think the schedule should be equitable so we can fairly evaluate all these teams. That's what I believe.
Yeah, or you made the scenario like Purdue or a Cincinnati or some team like that that's decent in their conference the year before, and then have that game to where there's at least some sort of a test. And I'm not just saying this for Alabama. I mean this across the board.
Sure.
So I think you heading in the right direction.
What I'll say about your series with Texas is I hope once we watch these games that we're excited to see them. And as you mentioned, Texas just brought in a tremendous recruiting class, and their classes under Tom Herman were nothing to scoff at. They should be able to play with Alabama. But if you watch Texas play football, and specifically last season, if that Texas team shows up against Alabama, they're going to get destroyed. They're going to get completely annihilated. If they don't improve, they're going to get killed in the SEC period. They're not going to hit with Alabama. They're just not going to execute with Alabama. They're not willing tacklers. They're just not tough enough to play Alabama. They're going to have a renaissance of an off season to be able to play Alabama.
Well, I thought, Mark, that Sam Ehlinger was going to be a really, really good college quarterback, and he was decent, but he wasn't what I thought he was going to be. And I thought that he was going to be, one of the better quarterbacks in the country. And he just, I call him Mr. Inconsistency, because you would see him in games where he looked like a really good college quarterback, and in some games where he looked completely lost. And I don't know what's happened, there, but hopefully it's a good game. I mean, I would like it to be a good game. So I appreciate you taking my call.
Think about how talented Miami's roster is. It's not an all-star, like top of the line elite roster, but it's a really good top 12 to 15 roster in college football. And that was not a game. It was just, the final score didn't look ridiculous or anything, but it was not a game. Alabama crushed them.
Well, you know what it is, Mark? You know what I really think it is? And this is my personal opinion, but under Manny Diaz, and who was the guy before Manny?
Mark Richt.
Mark. Okay, yeah. I think in the Diaz era, I think that it was they didn't have the right culture there, and I think they got like Florida State did under Taggart, and it was all about swagger, and it was more about looking cool than it was playing winning football. And that is, in my opinion, exactly what happened to Florida State under Taggart. And I think to some extent that's what happened to Miami under Diaz. And I think Diaz is a great coordinator, but in my opinion, he had no business being a head coach.
Agreed.
But all right. Well, thank you for taking my call, and it's good to hear from you again. And I'll call back in soon.
Thanks, Hunter. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
I have left this comment up by our guy, Golden Blue Dude, for a while here, not to draw attention to it, but I just wanted to say hi to Golden Blue Dude. Good to have him here. Thank you so much. Hopefully you hear me now. Hopefully you're still watching, but appreciate you stopping by, man. We got a West Virginia channel featuring the Golden Blue Dude. And we do our West Virginia show every Friday night, and our guy, Coos's Corner, and Travis Kenobi held down the fort this past Friday night when Chris and I couldn't be there. So we appreciate them. And we've done this 10 consecutive Friday nights. So join us here at the Voice of College Football and head on over to our West Virginia channel where we've got Travis Kenobi from Last Word on College Football. We got Justin from Coos's Corner. We got Golden Blue Dude, of course. And you got to put up with me as well. So West Virginia channel right here at the Voice of College Football. But West Virginia live conversation Friday night. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hi there, Marine 76.
Nice.
I'm a proponent. Oh, hi there. I'm a proponent for expanding the playoff, but the only way to get in is if you win your conference championship, and you are the conference champion, whether you win that mini conference championship game or you just have the best record in your conference. And I think that should be extended to the group of 5 as well, but that gives us that strange buy-in problem that you described earlier on a few episodes previously with the 10 teams. I guess there's no simple way to do it, but I guess I want to expand that conversation to how do we get to the point where there is representation for the group of 5? I believe that you'd have to have the NCAA take up its mantle as a governing body that it used to hold. It still has the power to do so jurisdictionally. It's just decided to be a sleeping giant. And that's the only way that you're going to have the NIT, or in this case, bowl games. And it's going to be the only, bowl games are going to be there. But eventually the NIT or bowl games are going to diminish in its importance, unfortunately. But if you're going to have representation, though, for these smaller conferences, the only way to do that is to have a governing body do it, because the group, the Power 5, they have the reins right now, and they have complete control, seemingly, in my opinion. Sorry, sir. Go on ahead.
No, I've enjoyed your open there. So I've got a few questions. So you would like to see all the conference champions and no one else?
That's true.
Okay.
Well,
okay, that's fine.
I guess you'd have to have Notre Dame, wouldn't you? So I guess 12 would be the logical conclusion.
You don't
then you'd
have
have that
to.
other.
You don't have to do anything. You could say Notre Dame join a conference, or you're never going to make the playoff because you've got to win a conference. If that's what your setup is. So you're giving just as much weight to winning a group of 5 conference as a Power 5 conference.
I would, knowing full well that these teams are going to get probably 14-point differences on them, if not higher.
Yeah.
But, that's the NCAA. Higher, sure, 35. Maybe top end, maybe higher than that.
So we've got a 10-team playoff with all the conference champions in and nobody else, but we're going to have buys.
Unfortunately.
Okay. Or unless we combine conferences.
Oh, okay. So you're thinking Big Ten, Pac-10 scheduling deal there. That's an interesting way for the conversation to develop, because for me, it would be interesting if there were 4 conferences that were involved, including the Big 12, where you would have maybe you would have the winner, Utah and Michigan, play this season, and you would have the Utah, the very worst Big 12 team, and then it would sort of cycle through these conferences. Oh, I didn't describe that well enough. So you're going to have the premier matchup between the conferences, say the 1-1, 2-2, 3-3, with conference A and B. Then A and C would have their little 1-14 or 1-12, as it were.
Well, when I mentioned that we would have to have conference contraction or combining of conferences to get down to 8, that would have to involve all the conferences pretty much. You can't just slam two conferences together and have a 26 team conference. That's not what I'm proposing. You can't just have the Pac-12 with 12 teams and the Big Ten with 14 teams slammed together and have a 26 team conference. So this would involve way too much. This would have to be orchestrated way. These conferences are not going to be joining and contracting and all those things just to achieve a playoff, because there's a lot of other things that are involved here. There are other sports, there's academics, there's travel, there's all this other stuff. So we're not going to restructure all of college football. We can in fantasy land, we can do that, but in actuality, it's not going to be changed just to serve a playoff. They can't even get together a playoff the way things stand right now.
Which is strange, because the only conference that really stands to benefit is the SEC. They've never been locked out of the playoff. The Big Ten's been locked out 1 year. Pac-12 has been locked out a few years. Big 12, they're not going to be around so much longer, but their values dropped. How many playoffs are they going to attend? Only the SEC is the one that's viable enough of a brand to have their team, their number one, sometimes two teams in year to year in the top four.
Absolutely. I actually think the Big Ten is the most gained from this playoff expansion. If you look at the year-to-year performance of the Big Ten and look at an expansion to 12 teams, and most of the models have just one of those going to a group of 5, and then the other 11 spots are most likely going to be Power 5 teams, that the Big Ten would have the most to gain.
Oh, certainly. If we're going to go by the at-large model or go on some sort of ranking, or even the bracket, the 64 bracket in basketball has a sort of select group of power players deciding who gets in and who doesn't for the at-large berths. But the Big Ten would be a beneficiary if it were to expand. That's for sure. If the at-large model persists, which it probably will.
So Marine 76, you are right on board with one of my best friends who is not a huge college football fan whatsoever. He sits and watches some games on Saturday. He's an Ohio State fan, but he's not he doesn't know players. He doesn't pay attention. He certainly doesn't read about it, talk about it, anything like that. He's just a football guy that likes to watch some football on the weekends, but he is strictly for conference champions. He's like, win your conference, win your conference. This is athletics. Win the conference. Why do we have conferences?
You know, college football has always been the aberration where it's, we're going to, before the BCS, we're just going to cast a tally at the end and make a vote. Well, even we're going to cast a vote prior to the games, really. Then there's the BCS, which is like a system that led to this situation where we're going to have a group of suits decide who's going to go in. But I think the BCS model was a little bit more fair, honestly, in the current system.
It was more fair because we had computers and polls rather than 13 people deciding.
I'd say so, because these people have vested interests in their conference, and it seems to be skewed towards people that are, I wouldn't say like agent. Well, yeah, I'd say almost like an agent would work to benefit their conference, even though it's mixed results for all of these conferences.
The only reason I disagree with you, Marine 76, is for the sheer fact that when you have 4 teams instead of 2 teams, you have just afforded 2 more opportunities to win a national championship. That's simply what makes it a better system in my eyes. Makes it a better system is that we could go through every year the BCS, and excluding maybe 1 or 2 years, I could tell you, well, what about that team? What about that team? And what about that team? They had just as good a resume as one of the 2 teams that made the BCS championship game. So as soon as this
Right.
playoff was announced, anybody who asked me, what do you think of this system? I said, it's not a good system. I don't want people deciding who makes the playoff, but it's simply a better system just because it's afforded two other teams that have worthy resumes a chance to prove it on the field that they can win a national championship. That's the only thing that makes it better.
Point well taken. Bringing it back to, I guess, more grounded things. Believe it or not, I feel the same way that the Minnesota Vikings feel about Harbaugh. I thought he was a planner. I thought he was somebody. I guess he must have had offensive coordinators over at the 49ers, and he sort of probably restricted Gaddis. I'm happy as a Michigan State fan to have him over in Ann Arbor. He doesn't have a balanced offense, which means that if he ever gets behind, he's going to have to rely on a passer to win the game who hasn't been passing the ball all season. Whereas you have Michigan State, and I think number one Michigan State fan brought it up, we're getting quarterback talent that probably should have went to Ann Arbor if they had a balanced system. We're getting stronger by becoming more balanced, even though they clearly have better recruiting. What's good recruiting if you're not schematically up to date?
Absolutely. You need both. You need the players first and foremost, but you also need to put them in a position to win.
It's really shocking. I would have, I was sort of blinded by the light, and I was like, wow, Michigan seems like a really powerful school. It was true that Michigan State beat them last year, but I was like, wow, I think they're really going to tear. They're going to tear into Georgia. Georgia was like a bunch of people 2 years older, like in middle school, picking on the Michigan front line there. It was bad, and they couldn't play from behind. And it's almost a shame. I think they're changing quarterbacks, and it's not a sure thing that if you're going to replace their current quarterback, I forget his name, that the next one coming in is going to be any bit better. And he doesn't seem to have the talents. The current one doesn't have the talents as the other quarterbacks at similar schools, unfortunately. Maybe because he doesn't have the reps.
Yeah, I think Cade McNamara is a good quarterback. He's not an exceptional quarterback. He's not the guy that's going to carry a team. He's not. I don't see him succeeding.
A Chad Pennington allegory. It was a level higher. But I guess that runs out my sort of my thoughts on today's issues.
Very good. All right, Marine 76.
Have a good day, sir.
I appreciate it. You have a good one as well.
Bye.
Falconer X is here. He's thrown a super sticker our way. We appreciate that, Falconer X. Always love to see these super stickers in Falconer X. SEC scheduling makes sure the top SEC teams get to the playoffs. Sorry, Falconer X, I do not agree with you. I just think that the SEC scheduling is bad. This is why it's bad. Okay. Got two divisions, and they're not balanced. So the SEC West has been better than the East for ever since about 2008. Since Alabama emerged and Florida dropped and Tennessee dropped, the SEC West has been decidedly better than the East. The SEC West has won the cross-sectional game matchup every year, and sometimes it's not even close. So they play two games against each other, 7 teams playing 2 games. That's 14 games. Some years we've had like 10-4, 11-3. This past year, I believe it was a 6-game difference. So it was, what would that be? Was it 10-4? So the West won 10 and the East won 4, and that's every year. So do I think that that necessarily needs to be addressed? Not necessarily, because East and West, the division of the geography Makes sense, except for Mizzou was moved to the East. Okay. The issue with the SEC is that they only play 2 non-division games. So that really restricts how flexible you can be with the schedule and in trying to make the schedule balanced and fair when you only play 2 teams in the other 7-team division. And then the one team is designated every year. Tennessee, Alabama, fine. Play every year. You should play every year as a non-division rival because that is a great college football rivalry that needs to be played every year. Georgia, Auburn, play every year. The South's oldest rivalry needs to be played every year. LSU, Florida has become a rivalry. It's been a rivalry throughout the SEC for years and years and years. I'm good with that one. The other 4 rivalries, quote, rivalries, ditch them. They do not need to be played. There's no reason to schedule. Why schedule them? Why does everyone have to have a designated rival in the other division? It doesn't make any sense. There's no connection between Ole Miss and Vandy. There's certainly no connection between Texas A&M and South Carolina. There couldn't be. You couldn't choose 2 schools in the SEC that have less to do with one another than Texas A&M and South Carolina, and they play every year. Get rid of it. It's not needed. You will free up the schedule to make it more balanced and more equitable. The same thing holds true for the ACC. They have pretend rivalries for no reason, and it gridlocks the schedule. Tony, thank you so much for the Texas A&M helmet. I apologize that I did not remember that it was you who sent me the helmet, but thank you so much for that. As soon as I saw your name, I was like, yes, Tony sent us the Texas A&M helmet. And again, Eric with the fine additions coming for Oregon. And Eric, I believe based on your comment, did you send us the other Pac-12s? I think you did. Washington State, UCLA, and Stanford. Appreciate that. All right, next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
To the man that gives college football its voice, the great Mark Rogers. Hi, and how are you, sir?
David, I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, I got to ask you, I mean, I don't know where the 12-team playoff is starting to get traction and talk out there. I mean, as a firm believer, and you're a fan of the 18 playoff, I'm a fan of the 18 playoff. Let's circle back to where nothing's ideal. I get that. But from the standpoint of, and I agree with everybody that says conference championships should matter. When they created the 14 playoff, everybody saw what the imbalance was. You have 5 major conferences, you have 4 playoff spots. That's an imbalance. If you go to 8 teams, which I believe is the ideal number, there you go. 5 teams, 5 of those 8 bids go to the 5 conference champions. You can still have a major non-power 5 team, i.e. a Cincinnati like you had this year. And then we all know you can find 2 solid at-large bids that are in the top 8 out of the SEC. Maybe the SEC gets 2 of those teams because there's been years where the SEC has had 3 top 8 teams in the country. So I'm not saying 8 is ideal, but I still think it's the best number. What do you think about that analysis?
I love everything that you stated there for the most part, David. The one question I would have is that are you going to guarantee the group of 5 to have a bid, or they're just within the selection process?
I would believe that they would. Now they would need to do something special. I mean, again, you have to take record into consideration. You have to take who they beat into consideration. Like, I mean, Cincinnati this year kind of caught the perfect storm of the ACC being terrible, the Pac-12 not being that good, Oklahoma State losing in the Big 12 title game, and the SEC, stocking up 2 teams. So really, you had 3 major conferences that were left out this year. So in a way, they caught the perfect storm, and they had a huge win in their, by beating Notre Dame at Notre Dame.
So it sounds like you're
Outside of
saying. So you're saying what I'm getting out of that is that they will not, in your format, have an automatic selection, the group of 5.
I wouldn't say automatic. I mean, they obviously have to be able to earn their way in, Mark. I mean, they're going to have to be able to accomplish something. I mean, they're going to have the right record, and they're going to have the right resume. And like you, I put an emphasis on quality wins. You show me a couple of quality wins with a good record to back it up, of course you should be a top 8 team at that point, I would think.
Well, this is where we differ to a certain extent, David, because I hear your logic and it makes sense. I just like to have things more defined. So basically, you're still going to leave it. You're still going to leave it in the hands of a committee to determine, did these group of 5 teams or this group of 5 team do enough, or did they not? I want it to be defined. What does that mean?
You're always going to do that to some extent, Mark. You're always going to leave it to a committee to some extent.
No, I'm not leaving it to a committee. No committee in my playoff system. None. Okay. You don't need a committee.
Okay. So you're saying that through your defined criteria,
yes,
that's how you get. Okay. I get what you're saying. Right. I mean, I'm not necessarily a fan of the people in suits, but I mean, I think that, I hear what you're saying. I guess the criteria would have to come down from somewhere to say, okay, this is the criteria etched in stone to be able to meet the qualifications of being one of the 8-team playoffs. Is basically what you're saying. Before it's all said and done, set that criteria up and make that the criteria to make the playoff. Is basically what you're saying, Mark.
That's the way I would do it. I don't like being held hostage by 13 people. I don't know why they rule college football. They rule college football.
I hear you.
Everybody cares about the playoff. That's the most important thing, whether it should be or not. Everybody cares about the playoff. And we have 13 people deciding who goes to the playoff.
Okay.
And they really don't even need to give an answer as to why they selected the teams that they did.
But by the Mark Rogers logic, though, isn't it going to be some form of suit that are creating the criteria to start with?
Well, you could say that about anything. Weren't there NFL suits that determined what the playoff system is? Yeah, but it's still an objective criteria that they're not sitting there every year saying, who do we want in the playoff? They build a system. Right. The system works. The system selects the teams, not people.
Okay. So we've already identified one of the definitive criteria that I think we both agree on, which is winning your conference championship. So, I mean, that would lock in 5 of the 8 spots. Did you have any other specific criteria that you want them to meet? Double-digit wins, certain amount of top 20 wins? Because I know you put emphasis on quality wins, Mark. I mean, what do you think?
Okay, so I will make this statement before I address the 8-team playoff, that if we were playing video games without human beings that should have the wear and tear on their bodies limited, and that taken into consideration, I would love a 16-team playoff. I would love a 16-team playoff. All right, let's put that aside. We're going to focus on 8 teams. So, I can understand the logic to eliminate the group of 5, to eliminate them and make it a completely Power 5, because even Cincinnati this year, I don't know that they were one of the 4 best teams in the country. And even if they were, I don't think they earned the playoff spot because they won all their games.
Right.
But UCF won all of its games 2 consecutive years. I don't know why they didn't earn a spot. But anyway, Cincinnati earned it in quotes because they won all of its games, and they happened to schedule Notre Dame, which that was certainly a tremendous win. But their schedule didn't compare to a Power 5 schedule.
Right. Remember, Mark, too, they also caught a year where the other conferences were awful. The ACC was awful.
Yeah.
The Big 12 was down. The Pac-12 was down. So it also kind of helped that the other conferences didn't live up to their end of the bargain here, so to speak.
Yeah. So I can go with either the group of 5 in or the group of 5 out. I certainly see the argument points on either side, but I just believe that they should either be in or out. I would give them 1 spot out of 8 or no spots. I would not just make it determined each and every year. They would either get a spot, and I don't care if they're 9-3, and they're not going to be 9-3 if you're talking about the very best team in the group of 5 out of 65 teams.
Sure.
There's always a 1-loss group of 5 team. So we're not going to see that happen. There's just too many teams. They play too much football. There's 65 of them. That's just like the best Power 5 team is never 9-3. So they're always going to be 11-1 or 12-1 with a conference championship win, or 13-0. They just always have been. It's just by sheer math. There's going to be a deserving, by some estimations, group of 5 team. So I want them included or excluded. I want that to be defined myself.
Okay.
And then past that,
I would.
I just to complete my system here, the 5 champions of the Power 5, and then you've got, if you include the group of 5, you've got 2 wild cards from the Power 5, and for me that would be based on record and then strength of record. So people would not be selecting it. I would select the 2 best records in the Power 5, and there's going to be a log jam. It's going to be more like 5 teams are going to be vying for those 2 spots. And then that strength of record statistic is a combination of strength of schedule and how much you dominated that schedule. I would go by that statistic.
Okay. See, I think that, I mean, obviously we know that the 5 spots, once you lay down the criteria of winning the conference championship is, that's the criteria, that's etched in stone. You get those 5 spots. The interesting thing is, and I hear what you're saying, if you have this criteria set in stone to start, I still think you're going to have debate for those final 3 spots, even if the criteria is set forward before the start of the season. Because it's going to be an interesting thing to select those last 3 teams. Let's say a non-Power 5, or you say you're open to the fact, Mark, to where it might not be a non-Power 5 in one of those years, right? It could just be 3. The other 3 teams could be from the major conferences.
I would think that they would all be from the major conferences, unless we determined we either are going, again, this is my system. We either determine the group of 5's in or they're out.
Okay. Now, do you think that, if I heard this right, is the SEC opposed to the expansion of the 4 team? Is that what you've been hearing?
Well, I got to admit, this latest news came out over the weekend, and I didn't look into it at all. So I don't know who's holding this up. I know I have yet to dive into these articles, but I know that prior to this roadblock, that some combination of the Big Ten and the ACC were holding things up, in the Pac-12 holding things up. And why, I don't know, but getting hung up on the semantics of, well, it's more than semantics. It could come into play, but 1 out of every 50 years that you're either selecting the 5 Power 5 conference champions, or you're selecting the top 5 conference champions.
Right. Well, I would say that, even if you go to 8, Mark, there's still a good chance the SEC is going to get 3 teams. So I wouldn't see why they would be so opposed to 8. I mean, the conference is still going to be fairly well represented at that particular point as well. So, even if you went 8, wouldn't you say?
Yes. I may want to put a rule. Well, if I do it my way, I'm going by record and strength of record. But so we wouldn't need to put in this rule. But if we were going to side with your way in terms of having a committee come up with it, I wouldn't want two more teams from another conference selected.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I mean, it's what do they say again? They're putting this off till 2026. Mark, is that
Yes.
or 2025? Wonderful. See, again, and the other thing too is I think that this would allow, by allowing the 5 conference champions. I mean, college football is very territorial right now. Everybody knows that. I think it could get more areas of the country at the very least something to play for and more engaged in the sport.
Absolutely.
And I know that the South could care less, but that's still for the betterment of the sport. And they can still have their cake and eat it too, because at 8 teams, there's still a very good chance that 3 of their teams from their conference are going to make the playoff. So I wouldn't be that, whatever about it if they are holding it up. That's where I was going with that earlier. Mark, I did want to get to divisions before I let you go. Are you, and I know that we had, ways to improve college football. Clad had put out there the idea of eliminating the divisions. Now, did you say you could go either way on that, or are you for eliminating the divisions in the conferences, or where are you at on that?
I'm starting to lean toward eliminating these divisions. Let's take the Big Ten, for example. So what I attempted to do last week was build a balanced schedule, an equitable, fair schedule. And I didn't exhaust every measure, but I think I looked at it long enough to determine that even though there are less restrictions in the Big Ten than there are in the SEC and the ACC, that it's still nearly impossible to build a completely equitable schedule because of the divisions.
Right.
And the divisions, okay, it's been pretty well proven through the 8 years of these divisions is that the divisions from top to bottom are comparable. The East and the West, the East beat the number of wins between the two conferences or two divisions this past season was 32-31 East. And it's like that just about every year. The problem is that the best teams are in the East. The West is balanced. Right. The East is divided. The East is great and horrible. So all that matters toward a playoff or a conference championship is, of course, what's going on at the top. And if you go through these 8 or 9 years, you see where about half the time we would have had 2 East teams. If we were going strictly by 1-2 seedings into the championship game, we would have had 2 East teams like we would have this year with Michigan, Ohio State, and about the other half we would have had 1 East and 1 West. We would have never had 2 West teams.
Right.
So I'm starting to side toward wanting to see the 2 best teams in the conference play in the championship game.
Well, see, the one thing with the Big Ten, I just think is obvious. You have the 3 powers, the 3 best programs, dominant programs in the conference are obviously Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. My thing, well, and I'll get to the other point here in a minute, is why isn't Penn State over on the other side?
Because of geography.
Why was it designated? Okay, I mean,
it's East and West.
But yeah, I hear you, but I don't know. Sometimes it's geography. I don't know. If you can, I think that would create more. I was just thinking of a way to create more competitive balance. You know what I mean? If you had them over on the other side, because at the very least, you'd have one of the 3 major powers over on the other side. I guess that's it. It's just they try to divide it up along.
Oh, it's perfectly divided geographically. If that's all you care about, it's perfectly divided. The only decision to be made is Indiana and Purdue playing in the same state. They could be on either side. That's really not going to change much of anything. But it's perfectly divided, East and West. Now, the way you're suggesting that it be approached is the initial incarnation of the legends and the leaders. Yeah. That's what they did. They researched the previous 10 or 12 football seasons and made very analytical conclusions to wanting to build balanced divisions. And we didn't get to see it play out for long, but it looked like it worked from that standpoint. But people were just confused as to why is this team in this division, that team in that division, and it doesn't make any sense geographically or otherwise. And then obviously with the names being what they were, people were confused by that. And they obviously took a match to it.
Well, as a college football traditionalist, as I know you are, Mr. Mark Rogers, and as I'd like to think I am, I guess it just means we're getting older, maybe. But the fact that Ohio State and Michigan can be played in back-to-back weeks, and that Ohio State and Michigan should only be played in Ann Arbor and in Columbus, as a longtime fan of that rivalry, how much does that cause you pause, if at all?
I think this sport has changed so much in the last 10 years or so that it doesn't bother me.
Okay. I mean, that's the one thing that I was thinking about. Maybe I just hold the rivalry so near and dear, and you've watched it longer than I have.
Yeah,
I
know.
That, that's where the traditionalist pops up. And I was thinking about, eliminating divisions, and yeah, that does sound like a really good idea. And then I think, not that I don't think we would kick their butt 2 weeks in a row, because I know we would, but I just the traditionalist keeps on haunting.
Oh, I think you raise a great point, because there's part of me that would think it would be kind of interesting, intriguing, kind of cool to see them play a second consecutive time in a different setting for the Big Ten championship. But then that takes away from the scheduled game, the original game.
Right. Well, remember 2006, we almost had that happen again, Mark.
Yeah, I was all for that. I wanted to see that. Right.
Yeah, we got very close that year. Unfortunately for both teams, it didn't work out well come the postseason.
Yeah.
Well, as always, it's a pleasure to talk college football with the great Mark Rogers. You have yourself a good evening, sir.
Thank you, David. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate everybody being on the line. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App if you don't want to contribute here on YouTube. But again, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App, just search Mark Rogers TV. And we, of course, have the Super Chat going as well. All right, thanks for calling. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's George.
George. What's going on?
I knew I was next. I knew that I was next because you can only line 3 people up in the queue in the line to get on.
Yes.
Right?
That's
so
it.
I knew it was my turn for sure. Because once I got on hold, there was 2 callers before me, and I said, I have to be next,
So if you call and you can't get in the queue, you know that it's just busy. You can't get through.
Right. Hey,
Okay.
Mark, I had to call like 80 times before that. And it's nothing, it doesn't bother me. That's what people do. That's how you do it. You just keep trying.
Yeah. So there's a number of calls that we could put in queue, but that the person that helps me finance this and puts this together, we decided on 3. It costs more the more calls you put on hold.
It's pointless, Mark. It's pointless. Don't do it. Why would you put somebody on hold and they're number 89? That's ridiculous. Just leave it the way it is. If you get in, you can't be no more than 2 calls away. I don't care if I don't get through. It's fair for everybody. If you get through, you get through, But I keep dialing. I don't play around. I'm serious when I do it, I'm like, you hang it, your thing hangs up, I hit dial again, till I get through. I'm a veteran. I'm just telling them how it works.
What is going on with you, George?
I think the number one fair way to fix this thing is they have an NIT tournament for basketball. You can only make a football player play so many games a year. It's just not fair. That's why people sit out. I mean, they get injured the whole way through the season. Why would you play one more meaningless game than you have to? If they expand these playoffs, players are going to be sitting out of playoff games when they're number 8 or 7, and they know they don't even want to play Alabama or Georgia.
Well,
They'd sit out of that game alone. They're like, you're not putting me out there against them guys.
I hate to.
I'll drop out. I'll drop out of the.
I hate to admit it, but I kind of lean that way as well. Once I started thinking about this, watching all these bowl games this year, and we were talking obviously constantly about these opt-outs, and I was thinking, you know what? We're talking about expanding this playoff. Well, players are not sitting out of the playoff now because it's just like playing another bowl game, but it obviously means a whole bunch more, and that's why they play the whole season to get to the playoff and win a championship. But if we're going to line up like 3 playoff games for these players,
right. I think I've actually figured it out by accident. Sitting here self-medicating, I think I figured out a fair way to do it.
okay.
They need to have another round of playoffs going on simultaneously. We'll do these on Sundays or Thursdays, and it's number 5 through 8. So we can have a top 8 that way. But you can't put them all in one round robin. That's ridiculous. Because Alabama or Georgia or Texas A&M or one of these top 6 schools is going to steamroll you. Ask anybody. We've all seen it. It happens every year. Nobody's beating those top 6 or 8 teams. I'd say top 4.
How many teams do you want in this playoff, George?
4 for the national championship. And if you want to go crazy, we can have another round. It can be the junior varsity league, but we'll call it something nicer. And you can play for 5 through 8 if you just insist on playing another game. And if you still want more, we can do 9 through 13.
Whoa.
Or whatever it was.
So, okay, if I get this straight, you still have your 4-team playoff seeds 1 through 4.
Right.
Okay. Then you've got this other playoff 5 through 8.
If you want to, if people really care, are you happy to be number 5 through 8? Will your players play for that prize of coming in? I mean, think about it. There's 130 teams.
No, nobody's going to play.
I would play to be number 7.
No.
If I was Cincinnati and I could get number 6 or 7, that's worth it. But don't put them up against Alabama. That's ridiculous.
No. That's not going to work. Nobody's going to care about that. Nobody's going to care about who finishes number 5. That there's a playoff for number 5.
Okay, how about this? This? We make the schedules a month before the season starts. The experts pick the top 64 teams, and we put them in a round robin the last 13 weeks. And then we play the final game. How about that?
Is that how many games you play? If you play 64? It's not that
many. I don't know. You could figure that out.
Only like 6.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
okay,
because the NCAA basketball tournament used to be 64 teams, and they played 6 if you made it to the championship game. This is
adjust the numbers accordingly.
Okay.
I'm just giving you the format. I don't care about the details. I'm not a detail person.
I do not want to do this, but I have just worked out your system for you, George. Forget about the experts. Forget about the experts trying to pick. We don't want experts involved. We don't want experts, so-called experts, trying to pick anything. No, we want players and teams to play on the field and determine what's what. So we take your system.
Give me your best shot. It sounds good. I'm excited to hear it.
George, we take your system, but we implement it halfway through the season. So it takes 6 games to get to the conclusion of a 64-team tournament. So that's half the football season. So you play half the football season the way you do now. Everybody plays a 6-game season, and then you take the top 64 and you play that tournament the last half of the season.
That sounds good. That's smart.
There you go.
Hey, MVP 24 asked me to ask you to read the $100 chat.
Oh, that's a ways down here.
Super chat.
I'm way above. I'm at what time is it? It's
you're easily an hour and a half behind.
Oh yeah,
now.
10:34. I'm at 9:27. This happens every show.
Yeah.
Wait, I got to read.
Sometimes you just got to spin it forward and only look for the super chat.
Okay. Yes. We're trying to get to that level of popularity, George, but we got to get to these super chats here. Falconer X, thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. 222. I hope Notre Dame and D-Rock Irish enjoy Al Golden. Falconer X, our Miami guy. Appreciate that, Falconer X. Then we've got Erica. Erica, thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate you. Good evening, Mark. Who do you think will be Iowa's new quarterback coach? Also, what do you make of the rumors surrounding Brian Ferentz? So, Erica, I will not be able to answer your questions, unfortunately, but of course, we've got our Iowa show tomorrow night. We will talk about Iowa's new quarterback coach because I have no idea who it's going to be. We talked last week about the 4 or 5 candidates, and then the NFL rumor with Ferentz. We will address all that tomorrow night, Erica. So join us on the Iowa show, 5:30 Eastern, and we will address all that. But we thank you so much for the super chat. You will not need to send us another super chat. We will answer those 2 questions, Erica, tomorrow night. It's great to see you. All right, George, I'm still trying to make it to our guy. I'm guessing this is Kyle jumping in. Well, we got Falconer X. Falconer X with a 222 and a 111. Thank you, Falconer X. Appreciate that. And Falconer X again would love to see 6 to 8 classic bowl games. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Falconer X. And then I keep going. And I should be there. 10:01. And there's a lot of comments. Okay, Falconer X again. Florida versus Florida State in Jacksonville. Okay. Falconer X, appreciate you being here. Okay, then we've got Neil Campbell. Thank you so much for the super chat, Neil. Appreciate that so much. Glad to see you on, Mark. My team might never make it to a playoff. Just want to say stay strong in the regular season. Go Nevada Wolfpack. George, we've got a Nevada fan with a $100 super chat. Neil Campbell. You talk about.
I saw that. That's the one.
Neil, thank you so much for that. That is much appreciated.
That was a good super chat. He said, hey, we
Roots
might
for
never
Nevada.
make it.
We've got a Nevada fan watching. And I've seen
It's
Neil's
about
name
damn
before.
time.
I just didn't know who he rooted for. All right, George. I gonna go to this next call. What do you got?
Just some people ask me, do you have a Georgia helmet there?
There is no Georgia helmet. Nope.
That is the most insane thing I've ever heard. No Georgia fan ever see you a helmet.
We've got 2, 4, 5. We've got 10, 11, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24 helmets. No Georgia.
Wow. Hey, okay, different subject. Phil Knight. Miami has a billionaire backing them, but that's not really. See, there's a problem here, Mark. Phil Knight doesn't have to use 1 penny of his own money to help Oregon. He just tells his company to finance them, to give them a commercial, a shoe, a running track, donate something to their school, hire their mother and dad to work for the company, blah, 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 blah. Nobody's ever going to be able to compete again if this guy gets involved in sports. He owns Tiger Woods and who's that other guy, Michael Jordan and Shaquille. It's just you see the problem. Everybody, they're not going to like this when Oregon runs off 12 national championships in 15 years and they buy every 5-star openly, just like we've all been doing forever,
Well,
they've always been getting paid to come to.
Oregon's had this money from Phil Knight for all this time.
It could tomorrow. It's just a money thing now. It's just crazy. I'm just hoping it works out good for Florida. But whoever. How would you like to be bidding against Phil Knight? And he goes, "I'll give you a shoe. You can have your own shoe and a TV commercial with your family eating lunch in the park and balloons. They're like, okay, I'm going to Oregon. And I'm a Gator fan. I'm just saying. You think Kirby's smart? Whoever's donating to his players can compete with Phil Knight?
Yeah, I'm not concerned.
And he doesn't even have to use any of his own personal $80 billion. He can use company money. You follow me? And that'll make him another $80 billion. This is not a good thing what just happened. I hope he doesn't get involved. I hope he likes it the way it is. He doesn't want to just make a show of force. Although he did get Georgia's defensive coordinator, the greatest defense in the history of college football, right? It could be an easy excuse for him to have the top defense in the country forever now.
I'm going to have to see that play out first before I see Oregon dominating college football. All right, George.
All right. Hey, listen, from now on the show, can you act like you have a director, George, sitting on the side and a producer, MVP24, and people say they're not real, and you can say, yeah, they are.
I would rather have the producers and directors and assistants and not pretend that they're here than actually pretend that they exist when they don't. I know.
In all honesty, you deserve them. You need them. Yeah. You should have a couple guys on laptops with you. If not physically, at least at the same time online. There's a technical way to do that.
All right, George. Appreciate you being here.
On my mind. Tell Kirby's visor I don't have George on my mind. Okay, I'll talk to you later.
See you, George.
Bye. Bye.
All right, our man George. So Falcon Rex back on here with what do we got from Falcon Rex? If they are your 13 people, then it's good. Oh, my 13 people. No, we don't have 13 people. We don't have anyone. We build a system, and the system takes care of the playoff selections. It's like the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA. They build systems. Yes, people have to build people have to do something. It always has to be initiated by people to start. Even the computers, even if you have computers selected, computers are programmed by people that tell the computers, program the computers to determine what's important and what's not. So it all comes back to people. But I don't want 13 people selecting playoff teams, or 12, or 11, or 50. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Mark. Hey, Mark, it's Danny. How are you?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Hey, I had to call in because I was getting a laugh out of that Michigan State fan who well, first of all, he didn't even know who Michigan's quarterback was. So, and then he said that he was glad that Harbaugh stayed. Listen, you know this, and I know this from the Michigan-Ohio State thing. In a real rivalry, you root for them to lose in volleyball. And when a coach is winning, like Harbaugh was winning last year, you don't want him to stay. You want him to go because maybe they'll end up with somebody, another rich rod hire or something like that. So that's kind of like swatting away a fly there from little brother. But if you look at Ohio State is the cream of the crop in the Big Ten. I mean, everybody's talking about how Michigan had a great year. For Michigan to win the Big Ten and beat Ohio State, that's a great year. But for Ohio State, it's not. So Michigan's got a lot of work to do. Like I would say, you're probably right about as a Michigan fan, I would tell you 75% of the time Ohio State win is probably true, unless we see something different, But anyway, one simple solution to that would be to move Michigan or Ohio State to the West. And I'll tell you right now, Woody Hayes would love that in today's world. Woody Hayes would say, why would I just want to beat them once if I can beat them twice? And I think if Michigan or Ohio State lost to each other in that last game and they went to Indy to play on a neutral field, I think whoever lost that game would be jacked up. I'm glad we didn't have to play Ohio State the next week in Indy this past year.
Yeah.
Because I think that would have been I don't know which way it would have gone, but I know Ohio State would have been jacked up, and it would have been can you imagine bringing all that history and all that tradition to a neutral field on a big stage like that? I mean, that would be, I think, pretty awesome.
Okay.
You know?
So you like it. Yeah. So I tend to think like you do that when the teams are evenly matched, as they appeared to be last year, even though Michigan controlled the game and were clearly the better team on that day. And let's take 2016. We know what happened that year. If they were going to play another game the next weekend, then shoot, Michigan would have been out for blood, of course, after what happened with that measurement in Columbus. But there would be other times in which, let's say 2018. So Ohio State and Michigan were the two best teams in the conference. Michigan was actually the better team based on score comparisons and comparing how they played leading up to that last game. And then you know what happened in the 2018 game in Columbus. It would have been interesting to see those years that Ohio State, 2018, 2019, if they would have played Michigan in a championship game after just hammering them the week before, if things would have been different.
And I think that they should, if they, you know, they're not going to do it. But if they did do it, the team to move to the West is Michigan, and the team to leave in the East is Ohio State. Because I have family that lives in like Youngstown, Ohio, and half of them are for Penn State, and half of them are for Ohio State. I mean, it's I've kind of wondered why that hasn't. Maybe because Penn State isn't winning enough. But that is a built-in rival for Ohio State.
Sure, it is. I consider them rivals. It doesn't come anywhere close to the game, but Ohio State and Penn State are rivals in my book. And so are Michigan and Penn State.
I think they should be I think that they should be as big a rivals as Michigan and Michigan State.
Yeah, I can see that to a certain extent, but of course, we now have 30 years built up of Penn State in the Big Ten.
Isn't that amazing? I can't believe it's been that long. They've done it. Yeah. I wonder what the overall record is over the 30 years with Penn State, Ohio State.
I'll count it out during one of these phone calls. It's Ohio State's got a decent edge, but it's not embarrassing.
Now the SEC, they kind of proved that they got the seeding correct. And I'm not a fan of the group of five thing. I think the group of five thing this year was, I don't want to call it a fluke, but it only happened because the group of five team happened to beat the team that was in the number 5 slot.
Sure. Yeah.
I think if that was any other team other than Notre Dame, in the number 5 spot. They should have got the 4 seed. I just don't think that I just don't feel it's the same. It's not. I don't think it's the same level of competition. I guess everybody wanted to see it though, and this was the year that it was. I guess the right thing to do. Who finished number 6? I don't even remember. Oh, it was Oklahoma State, right?
Wasn't Ohio
and
State
then
number
they ended
6?
up losing.
Are you talking about?
Oh, were they?
Yeah, when Cincinnati 4, Notre Dame 5, Ohio State 6.
Now, wouldn't have that been something, huh? If that was another group of 5 team and not Cincinnati. That still wouldn't work for Ohio State to get in. But wouldn't that have been something if because I think Ohio State would make some noise even after the Michigan game. I mean, Ohio State only lost that game because they couldn't stop the run. I mean, they couldn't stop Haskins.
Well, that would not have bode well against Georgia or Alabama.
Yeah, and look at Georgia, man. They deserve a lot of credit. They've been climbing that hill that Michigan tried to climb with Ohio State, and they actually got there. I remember when they fired MarkRogersTV, and I thought he was a good coach. I mean, he was like 10-2 a lot of years, But they deserve a lot of credit. Georgia does, They certainly dominated Michigan. I mean, it wasn't even a game. Not even any sense, But anyway, I still stick with what I said. There's too much time off between the championship games and the college playoffs. There's too much time, and they could easily get 8 teams together, use the Rose, Big Ten, give up the Rose Bowl thing, and use the Rose, Sugar, Orange, whatever, Fiesta, and play off those 8 teams. And Ohio State would have been in this year. And I think that would have been real interesting. I mean, they lost 1 game for crying out loud.
2.
Didn't Ohio State finish
2 games.
13-1?
They lost to Oregon and Michigan.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they dropped that Oregon game. Yeah, at the beginning of the season. That's right. But they still finished the same record as. But anyway, I think if you had 8 teams in there and one played 8, 2, 7, 3, 6, 4, 5, I think you'd have about 15 teams in there, towards the end of the season that had real good legitimate chances of getting in there. I think I read somewhere too that Ward Manuel is actually on that committee now.
Oh, is he? I will have to check up on that.
Yeah, check into that. You're good, because listen, if I'm ever telling you something that you don't know, then I'm way out ahead of things. You know what I mean? Because I learn a lot of stuff. Well, I learn a lot from you, and I learn a lot from your callers, and I learn a lot from people who in the chat who put some good stuff in there. So
I have not kept up with the committee like I should. Well, I appreciate you calling.
Absolutely.
And by the way, while we were talking there, after you had to mention, I cannot let a comment like Penn State, Ohio State, what's the record, slide by where my mind's not going to start adding up series records. So anyway, Penn State's beaten Ohio State 8 times since they joined the Big Ten.
It's 22-8.
Well, let's see, 93 through 21 isn't quite, what is that, 28 games? It might be 20-8. So there you go.
Okay.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
I didn't think Penn State had that many, but thanks for letting me know.
Absolutely. Have a good night.
Okay. All right.
All right. Yes. Penn State with 8 wins. So they joined the Big Ten in 93. Penn State won that 69-14 game in 94. Then they won a classic shootout in 97. Curtis Enos had a huge game. They won in 99. LeVar Arrington was all over Steve Belisari in the end zone with a big sack for a safety. That was a third win. 99, 2000. They won in 01 on a last-second field goal, did Penn State. 4 or 5. They won in 2005 in a whiteout. That was a Penn State team that almost played for the national championship, but they lost to Michigan on the last play of the game. That's 5. 06, 7, 8. 2008, Penn State won. They stopped Terrell Pryor at midfield on a 4th and inches play. Won by a touchdown, 13-6. So that was 08, 9, 10, 11. The 2011 Ohio State team that lost 7 games, they lost to Penn State by 3, I think 27-24. So there's 7. And then the blocked field goal game in Happy Valley in 2016 that led Penn State to the Big Ten championship. Those are the 8 Penn State wins. Falcon Rex, George is saying, don't go to 12-team playoff where number 1 starts against number 12, also making good for taking George's call. Yes, George wanted some kind of crazy playing for number 5 position. Yes, Erica, I saw your follow-up comment. So, yes, thank you. We will talk about that tomorrow night. I actually, during the last phone call, I texted Corey to let him know we have to answer Erica's 2 questions tomorrow night. You will get a much better response out of Corey than you will me. Yes, Lemansky. See you tomorrow night. And now we got Falcon Rex chiming in with Mark. Did you just complain about a call against Michigan? Did you watch the 2002 national championship game? Oh, Falcon Rex, don't get me started on the 02 national championship game. Falcon Rex, don't get me started. Everyone is fixated on the last call, the 4th and 14 or whatever there was a 4th and 14 before that Ohio State converted. Anyway, we all know the call in the end zone, the pass interference call. Yes. Do you know how many bad calls there were in that game against Ohio State? I can think of 3. And the most impactful one was when Ohio State had a 17-14 lead with roughly 3 minutes left in the game. Check this out, Falcon Rex. You can go to YouTube, where you're right on YouTube right now. Go to the 03 National Championship game, 02-03 National Championship game. Go to the final Ohio State drive in regulation. Go to the 3rd down play. You had 2 missed calls by the officials. Number 1, Chris Campbell caught the ball inbounds for a 1st down. That's number 1. This is before replay. Caught the ball inbounds to convert a 3rd down into a 1st down. Number 2, his jersey was being held out of his break. So that would have given Ohio State a 1st down with about 2:45 on the clock. Instead of having to punt, the punt that Miami ran back like 50 yards to field goal range. So we are here to educate. Joey, you are right. I don't know what's going on in the chat, but let's try not to get personal with our comments. Talk smack, college football smack. Yes, that's it. Please, nothing personal. And it appears as though we are done for the night. We got 2 hours in, no more phone calls. Read all the super chats. Thank you so much for the super chat contributions, everyone. Falcon Rex, Exploring with Ben, whoever left the super chats. Erica, thank you so much for that as well. And of course, Mr. Patterson. Yes. So I am going to do my very best. I say this all the time, but I really know. Thank you, Falcon Rex. You know what? If I were a Miami fan, I would complain about that call too. So I get it. You can see that call from both sides. Falcon Rex, thank you so much for that. We will be doing Miami football talk, of course, on Wednesday night. We'll be back at it Wednesday night with Cam at 7 Eastern. Okay, tomorrow we've got live streams at 5:30 and at 7. We've got Iowa Live at 5:30 Eastern on the Miami channel. We've got Nebraska at 7 on the Nebraska channel. All right. And in the meantime, I'm going to do my very best. I just have a difficult time trying to figure out when we should regularly schedule these live streams. Because I know I just jump on here and I throw out the notification, and you guys are great to jump on here on a regular basis. But I would love to be able to set, but we've got 9 team-specific live streams every week. So understand that I'm constantly recording. Like tomorrow, we've got a Kentucky record and some other teams coming up. We've got Clemson coming up this week and Georgia and Fire. I forget who else. Plus, we've got these team live streams with West Virginia, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, Iowa, Florida State, Miami, and Michigan. And so we've got 9 of those. So that's 9 live streams each week. And so then on top of that, I would love to get in about 3 call-in shows every week. It has been a while, Michael. It's been too long. I know. It's been since Super Bowl Sunday night since we did a live call-in show, and I need to do about 3 per week. But just to be able to figure out when is sometimes difficult with the other 9 live streams. So again, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. We appreciate everybody's contributions, whether that be in the live chat or your super chats. We appreciate it. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just search MarkRogersTV. And we will see you soon. And again, we've got Iowa and Nebraska live at 5:30 and 7 Eastern on Tuesday. See you then.